So it gives me really great pleasure to be on this DAV systems data for SDG thought leaders interview with a very illustrious person, Madhusudan, who is the CTO of a company called AMBEE. And in this podcast interview, we're going to be exploring, AMBEE's journey and Madhu's journey and some of the uh, issues and factors they deal with, applying data for sustainable development in their particular way. So it's really a great pleasure to meet you, Madhu. And maybe we can start by AMBEE is already quite a well-known company, but maybe we can start from your end. What do you feel is the mission and vision of AMBEE, especially when it comes to data and it comes to SDG or something related to this?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity here, Hari, and really appreciate that DAV is doing something which promotes sustainability. AMBEE is a company that was born out of a real idea, something that I personally felt with, and then has sort of taken off to solve something as large as massive as climate change and air pollution. And we've just only begun. When we started, not a lot of people were concerned by it in just about 3 years ago, be it air pollution or climate change. And now suddenly the world has woken up to all the things that it could do and how it could affect global economies at scale. So hence our mission is very clear. We want to help and improve the lives and health of not just millions and billions of people, but the planet itself. So we're on a mission to improve a lot of things that we face today, from poor air quality, poor living conditions in terms of environment, to all the harsh impacts because of climate change and warming that's happening, helping businesses de-risk the climate change and improving the health of people. So that's what we are after on the mission, Hari.
That's great, Madhu. So I can see that there are actually several stakeholders involved. There might be businesses which need to be de-risked against climate change, but there are also
Yeah,
ordinary people and their health and well-being. Both of these are important to what AMBEE wants to create, right? So
correct.
you also mentioned that there's some kind of linking between, like climate change and air pollution, perhaps. Like if you address one, you're addressing the other as well. And looking at your website, primarily you started off as like measuring environmental, air quality and things like that based on what happened to you yourself. You were mentioning your personal journey and how this came out of a personal need, right? So
Yeah.
I'm pretty interested. So how does this tie in with data science, AI, analytics, so on and so forth? So if you took one of these stakeholders, like let's say the common people making their lives better, how does data and data analytics, data science, AI, emerging technology help them? And if you took the other, which is climate action or climate change or decarbonization, how does data and data science play a role in creating value there as well?
Sure, definitely. So if you see, it's an upstream and a downstream problem.
Yeah.
When I say upstream are these businesses which try to reduce or improve or solve the problem at source.
Yeah.
And downstream is someone like a consumer, like a common man like us, who needs something immediate as an action to sort of protect his loved ones, for example. So we are trying to, for example, if we have launched India's first pollen data. A lot of us are just blind to this, that we get into seasonal cold and cough. How many times you might have heard this? I'm taking a very common example. That season is changing and that's why I have a runny nose. But how many of us have attributed to that? It is because of a seasonal pollen that is changing. We have no data, no understanding about it. And that causes, your mucous membrane to run and bacteria to develop and cause your viral or bacterial infection. And that's how seasonal allergies affect. And allergies become a very big problem now, and asthma and a whole lot of airborne related products. So when we now provide data to these users and tell them or influence their actions as a part of intervention as to what they can do, especially those asthmatics who could carry their inhalers and know where to not to go and where to be there at what point of time and when to wear a mask or take on an inhaler. So simple things like this, to even making lifestyle changes, significant changes, medication changes. So we are now working on both upstream and downstream for the same problem. On one side, we are helping users know what they're affected with, water environment, air quality, warming or humidity that they're affected with. On the other side, we're working with, let's say, a pharma agency, pharma company, sorry, who is building anti-allergy drugs. We're working with an insurance company who is building a healthcare insurance for risking because of for the risk that air pollution poses. So things like this, we're trying to bring this together. On the other side, we're bringing up the policymakers and policy writers to know, because the data was not existent.
Mm-hmm.
Like Peter Drucker said, how can you solve it if you can't measure it? That's where
Exactly.
we began measuring,
Yeah.
down to a very high resolution what you're breathing.
Great. So that sounds great. So you are actually collecting data, and then there are various stakeholders, including upstream, which is pharma, but also downstream, which are the actual afflicted people and beneficiaries slash users who can benefit in terms of their own choice making when it comes to having more granular data available and probably visible on your platform, right? So that sounds great. Um, so one question which I would have is, you talked a lot about de-risking business, and like decarbonization is something which we've also discussed before. Can you also shed some light on this, and can you show us how you seem to have a lot of value propositions for a lot of different kinds of stakeholders. Can you show us how it converges with what was we were discussing previously in terms of like pollen and air pollution data?
Sure, absolutely. Now, if you look at how the energy flows, or how the energy consumption happens,
Yeah.
98% of energy consumption is from fossil fuels energy,
Yeah.
right? And then fossil fuel energy consumption creates emission, which we're tracking. And because we're tracking emissions and other things, there is also a time where we'll have to remove the carbon out of the air. By
Mm-hmm.
simply, if we convert all the vehicles today to electric vehicles, all our LPG and other fossil fuel dependencies to other hydrogen or other alternative fuels, what about all the emission that we already have created? It has to be sequestered. There's no other option.
I
It
see.
will not solve the problem. Just moving to EV will not solve the problem. Electric vehicles will not solve the problem. So we are tracking the entire gamut of energy syndicate from the time and the fuel is found, and all the way to it is converted to emissions and sequestering carbon. This data becomes very important. A lot of companies are investing in sourcing the fuel, for example, consuming the fuel. Of course, the three biggest consumers are transport, buildings, and industries. These three consume the most of fossil fuel, and hence they are the three most emitters of pollution. They're causing the air pollution, because of which the global warming is happening.
I see. I
And
see.
hence, a lot of investment is now going into de-risking the climate change created by to remove the emissions created by these three major industries.
Yeah.
Now, how much of that money is going is actually helping your company being de-risking? It's a
Yeah.
data problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hence,
Yeah.
we are the first ones to provide you that data to
Yeah.
measure the impact of your investment, to
Yeah.
know where to invest
Yeah.
for the entire ESG, your environmental social governance,
Yeah.
and to be able to understand how much of carbon has been sequestered, because of which you've kept Earth within the carbon budget.
Yeah.
And again, with the Paris Climate Agreement coming in, there
Yeah.
are plenty of laws, risks, funds, money, investment going in, and we are here to provide them with data, and that's exactly the problem we're trying to solve.
Excellent. So what I'm understanding is that while you started as a excuse me, as a like a for users based air pollution, pollen, etc. kind of platform, you found that the same approach or the same platform can be used to track logistics, to track the movement of fuel, to do it across the supply chain, not just from point A to point B, but from end to end. And what you are telling me, the way I'm understanding it, is that there are actually huge value propositions for certain major companies in this regard, because they use a lot of this fuel, and because of the changing trends in the world, right? Like we have the Paris Agreement, which is the US is going to get back into it, for example. We have ESG laws, which globally are getting stricter. India also, they're getting stricter. Probably they're getting driven by investor perceptions of risk. If investors invest in a company which has a fragile supply chain, which could be under exposure, because of climate change risks, then they need the companies to show progress on this. So money in the companies is being allocated for like decarbonization, and That's why they want to measure how good it is, and AMBEE provides the platform for that, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, it's fantastic. So you started from a single user, I mean, your own use case, then you went to this company use case, and I believe you
yeah,
are also moving towards a kind of marketplace use case. So uh,
yeah.
I would like you to, we've had a previous chat about this, but I'd like you to share, if you don't mind, how do you see AMBEE as a marketplace? And secondly, how are you influenced or inspired by existing marketplace models? Who inspired you to do this? I know we've talked about Amazon, but tell me, how is AMBEE the Amazon of ESG data?
Yeah, definitely. So let's just take a step back on the example of what Amazon was in the initial just about a decade and a half ago.
Yeah,
Was that they started off? So there was still Dell, HP, and IBM, and all these guys making servers.
yeah,
VMware was still existing, providing virtual machines. There were still all these databases and languages, programming languages, and framework, which was helping people build their applications and still deploy, and there were still things going on. But there was still a gap of something that called a cloud was needed, and that's what Amazon started addressing when they first launched. Only the EC2, could only create virtual machines when they first started off. That was the only thing they started off with. And then slowly, if you see, they've added hundreds of new services. Basically, what you can do in an actual data center, you could do it everything on cloud. And there was Docker that you could put it on a ECS. But there's Kubernetes that is coming, and there's plenty of new databases, managed services required for you to scale, to deploy, to make things faster and improved and efficient. So the three important things is improved, fast, and efficient. This is the time now on the side of environment. We believe the next few years everybody has to watch out for, be it consumers, be it businesses, be it governments. They have to factor in the environment as the number one risk factor in everything they do. So there are still satellites that are monitoring Earth. There are so many sensors that are measuring environment, but how much of that data is available for anybody to consume or build applications or make decisions? Like how much water should I feed into my farm, which is several hundred acres? What part is under fertilized or over fertilized? How do I improve the yield? How can I do a regulated or AI-driven agriculture farming? Or what kind of clinical trial should I be running which correlates to the local conditions of people for a pharma company? What kind of insurance should I have for a business, for the health of people, for different type of economies, or what kind of decarbonizing is needed? So for all this, you need a marketplace. You need to be able to provide.
Madhusudan, you've gone on mute and your video's off. Sorry. Yeah,
Sorry.
you're back. Yeah.
Yeah. So that sort of combines data, that combines your cloud platforms. So now we are coming up with auto ML features that you could run on our platform on cloud. That you will be able to know how much energy consumption opportunity is there in your for your own company. How do you adopt a carbon roadmap? We have another feature that does an automatic exploratory data analytics towards fulfilling your business objectives by you just upload your data. You don't need a gamut of data scientists. And
Mhm.
slowly we have begun to go, shift towards helping people de-risk the effects of climate change by providing variety of things that will improve, make their systems efficient and faster.
Excellent.
So that's what we're heading towards.
So what I'm understanding is, like, your inspiration from Amazon was, at first there were kind of like siloed attempts to create server, architectures and so on and so forth. But then gradually, what happened was a very rich platform evolved with many other services to create value, and now you
Yeah,
have buyers and sellers of certain kind of commoditized information and information products, among other things, in a marketplace on this, like this virtual cloud layer. And what
yeah,
you are doing is you are building the next level of that layer, where, for businesses to engage, every business or every government entity, even everybody needs to factor in ESG, climate risks, and so on and so forth, generally into their strategy moving forward. And this requires, this presents several use cases where, you provide the platform for, actually, and the tools, some of the tools for, actually, solving these questions, answering them, in a straightforward, I mean, let's say, as straightforward as possible way. including some machine learning workflows and things like this, which might enable people to answer certain common questions, such as how do I, like how efficient are my logistics, or various
Yeah,
yeah, which you discussed.
yeah,
So so,
yeah.
so
Plenty of. Sorry, yeah, go on.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I mean, I think you've covered the use cases, but I mean, it sounds fascinating, because I think where this is getting driven from is the world understanding that they have to factor in environment, as you said. And it's not just environment, it's like the whole sustainability agenda, right? They have to factor that
yeah,
in. And
yeah.
ESG is, it's just showing up more and more on everybody's radar. So from that perspective, I just like to ask you, like, how do you have like pull from actual businesses, like, uh, I mean, you've mentioned some logistics businesses which are into logistics of fuel and all that, but are you seeing more and more market segments open up to to your value propositions? Do you find any challenge in communicating what you do to them? And do you see business as usual in India also starting to use your platforms very soon?
Yeah, definitely. The carbon trading platform that we're working on
Yeah,
has found great acceptance in the aviation sector.
yeah,
Of course, they were slowed down because they were massively hit because of COVID.
yeah,
But otherwise, with CORSIA, which is another law for international airlines to be compliant for carbon emissions
yeah.
that they contribute to and offset them
I see.
at somewhere else. So if you
Yeah,
have to offset, you need to be on somewhere else. You need to purchase those carbon credits
yeah,
or CRs as they are called, and then you need to have a proof audit, and that entire process takes them 3 to 6 months in some place. And
yeah.
on we're trying to make it under 30 seconds,
That's
the
amazing.
entire
Yeah,
process, and automate it and make it like it's like you're booking a ticket,
yeah,
and while you're booking, there is some currency added that offsets your carbon, and you're traveling carbon neutral.
yeah,
And that investment is actually going into decarbonizing. So the
yeah,
aviation as an industry, that's how we became a part of Airbus, this
yeah,
lab,
yeah,
and Airbus is, as you know, very big on sustainability.
yeah, yeah,
And hence it's coming in. We're seeing a lot of steel, companies also factoring in their on their roadmap
yeah,
some sort of carbon
yeah,
neutrality roadmap.
yeah, yeah,
By 2050, you saw Infosys declaring that,
yeah, yeah,
and many companies are now slowly on their own voluntarily, even though it's not driven by government, which I think it will change soon.
yeah, yeah,
They're heading towards that. So it's becoming easier now for us to
yeah,
show what they could be, and they're able to do it. It's not sustainability at cost.
yeah,
It's sustainability by being sustainable and
yeah,
not have to break a leg for it. So that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
our motto is, and we're
yeah,
bringing that into the table
yeah.
as value proposition.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, Madhu. I think like one of the major gripes which people have had with the sustainability agenda, or let's say the reason it's not been already taken up at maximum level, is because sustainability includes financial sustainability, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, it includes economic aspect. So if something like bankrupts you to be sustainable, then that's not really sustainability, right? So I do think, I do hope everybody who's watching this really sees the value of what you're doing. It's fascinating that Airbus I associate with aerospace and defense, but it's very interesting that you show that carbon offsetting, if that could happen automatically, perhaps based on some blockchain technologies and things like this. As soon as you buy the ticket, the carbon offset cost gets added, tracked, transferred to somebody else, the credits, the marketplace integration, so on and so forth. I think that's really fascinating stuff. And you mentioned that Airbus has been accelerating AMBEE as well. Would you like to say a few words about that? Like, I mean, obviously the value is clear, but do you see more companies like Airbus, which you wouldn't traditionally associate with SDG, investing in the SDG AI tech or data for SDG space because of these kinds of integrations and automatic marketplace transfers of credits and things like this?
Yeah, sure, definitely. See, for example, the case Airbus is involved is because aviation is heavily affected by climate change, especially when you have to, de-ice a flight because of blizzard, which is an act of climate change, or your planes got soaked in and they can no longer function because of a flood, which is again an act of climate change, natural calamities, or your consumption of fuel is not as efficient because of high temperatures, and you cannot fly zones are becoming shorter. All of this is they realize it's because of climate change, and just moving to alternate fuel will not be a solution. And for many years, we have contributed to pollution. So the same way, we have seen everybody from Google. We are a part of Google Launchpad as well, and to even working with Bosch is carbon neutral, by the way, this year, and many companies in different sectors. The first ones to come are automobile, the oil companies like Shell, for example, and then the large corporations are now looking at how they can be sustainable and ensure that high on charts on ESG. Despite in India, the law is not fully there yet. There is some portions of it, but they want to be ready ahead of everything, so they see the value in it. So many different sectors, from banking, and you would not believe, logistic companies to small and all the way to the large ones like shipping companies like Maersk. Everybody are thinking about sustainability, and it is definitely high up on the agenda. As far as Airbus goes, the CTO of Airbus, we are one of our favorite projects, and she, herself is very actively looking into sustainability at Airbus, and it's top priority for most companies today.
That's amazing, Madhu. I mean, I think the world is changing, and what I'm hearing from this is that it's changing, and a lot of this stuff requires data, right? Like the Peter Drucker quote, which you had, you have to manage it, you have to measure it. So we need people who can help measure this stuff, track this stuff, manage it, and that translates to a lot of skills from data science, but also other emerging tech like IoT and blockchain, and building platforms for this, and so on and so forth. But it's really fascinating that the aerospace companies are seeing climate change as a business risk for them. I mean, because of the blizzards and so on and so forth, and it's also motivated by a kind of internal R&D carbon tax, which is going towards this kind of strategic pivoting and so on and so forth. So, it sounds really fascinating, and I think you're really ahead of the curve with AMBEE. What I'd like to ask you is, this wave which is happening, how mature do you think the ecosystem is right now? Or do you think there's still some time before it soaks into the every boardroom will have a climate strategy? It's still going to take some time. And also, if you had three wishes, right, uh, what would they be? One, two, three, in order to make AMBEE's mission and vision more successful. And this is the question, basically: the ecosystem, including our smart cities project and so on and so forth, is it supporting what you're doing? And secondly, what would you require? One, two, three, if you had a wish list, and it could get granted for you to succeed.
It put me in a spot there, but let me try and answer it.
Okay.
Yes, many are opening up, especially we've got great support from investor community who are all about impact. And there are certain investments looking at only impact startups, companies like us, where we're combining data.
You've gone off, Madhu. Yeah.
Our data is going to be available on blockchain, and our data, we combine IoT, satellite data, and we're keeping it out there. And we're trying to solve some real problems. There's a lot of research that goes into it. We publish papers, and we are doing a very methodical data science approach. Yeah. And many people are recognizing that. So the ecosystem is definitely getting better. It's a lot better in the last 3 years, and we're very sure and certain that it's going to go only upwards from here on.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, is going to be the most important highest invested sector in more than any other in the next few years to come.
Yeah.
And coming to the three wishes, one, I really think the first wish I would like to make is that the government, especially the Indian government, would actually open up to the problem a lot faster in a much more aggressive manner. Not that they're doing great. Some of them are doing amazing work. Yeah. We have some great talent, problem solvers. I think they should all be given an opportunity by trying to remove as much as layers in the business as possible, so that at least we bring certain order, try to solve the problem. It's not that we have a problem but there are no solutions. We have people who love solving problems, and I think that alone will drive everything else. And there should be a way for all of us to join hands together, and we as a country can stand up to the problem and solve it without having to have one or two people make the entire decision and at the mercy of knowledge or of that one or two people. And the second wish that we'd like to see is carbon, capture and storage should become a recognized technology, and hydrofuels should be a part of the next fuel that's also coming up. As much as you want to go electric vehicles, there's not enough lithium. There are plenty of demand supply challenges. The cost of owning a EV is not straightforward and easy right now, and the infrastructure in India is at least a few years away. And hence, we should start being ahead by looking at different alternative fuels apart from what we have today. That is from carbon capture and storage. And the final wish is that we can, as AMBEE, this is very personal to us, is that we continue to learn and grow our company by creating. There's many areas we want to cater to in terms of value proposition. We are a value proposition by design company. We start with the value first. We onboard a user, and then we go about the product. So and hence we want to be able to do that 10x effectively year on year and try and solve this problem and wish to contribute in reducing at least 1% of global emissions and be able to contribute to the carbon budget, the 1.5 degrees temperature budget. If we could, any fraction, we have contributed to the reduction or the slowness, and I think our objective has been achieved.
That's pretty amazing, Madhu. So, thank you so much for those wishes also. I would invite anybody listening to this, the entrepreneurs, the government people, the students, to please, like think about these things. I mean, Madhu's asked for enthusiastic people to like help build all these value propositions, a value proposition based company. There are a lot of problem solvers. So, people who are in data for SDG, here's your opportunity, and they want to grow 10x on 10x, and like decarbonize the world. So so great to talk to you, Madhu. It's been a real pleasure, a real privilege, and I've learned tons. And like best of luck for what AMBEE does. Let's stay in touch, and hopefully we'll hear some updates as well from AMBEE as you go about doing what you're doing. I hope it was a good experience for you also coming on board for this podcast interview as a true thought leader in applying data science and other emerging technologies for sustainable development. And I hope you had a great experience today.
Thanks, Hari. I wonderfully, totally enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the call, on the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Madhu. Bye bye.